Welcome everyone. Good evening to all. I guess nobody joined from the New York office. So yeah, good evening to all. So today's session is based on React and AWS. Okay, so I have not added much of the slides because there are few things that I want to go over from the console, the AWS console, and maybe from there you all can get some idea on how you can interact with AWS console and work with React app. So let's begin. So initially when we build a React app, there are some things that we consider, like, okay, once we build the app, where we will deploy it. And most of the time it is not sure whether we can use AWS services or which AWS service will allow us to host that app. So these are some of the services which you can directly use. There are more, but considering the time frame, I have restricted it to these 4 services which you can directly use to host your React app. So let's say you have worked with React, you have added the components, you have built the pages, and your website is ready. And you have generated the build, that is the optimized version of all the components and files, and you want to host those files somewhere on the server. So each of these service can be helpful while doing so. So first one is Elastic Beanstalk. So Elastic Beanstalk is basically using EC2 to host those files, and it provides you with a environment and all other required platform or the environment, the platform that you need to host an React app. So in case if you are not familiar with EC2, like how to start the EC2 or how to initiate the instance in EC2, then you can quickly go for this option wherein the same EC2 service is used but through Elastic Beanstalk. Now you might be wondering, what is EC2? So EC2 is Elastic Cloud Compute. So it's a service provided by AWS for all the computations that normally you need to perform on your website or the app. Okay, so it works similar to your local machine, like how you create virtual host on your system and then you launch that particular website or access that website. Similarly, EC2 works at the same level. Only thing is, it is virtual way of setting up the system and then using it. Then we have S3. So it's a simple storage service wherein you store the files, and when you store the files, you can access those files as a website. So normally on our system, how we have different files stored on the local disk drive or SSD or HDD. Similarly, we have S3, wherein it provides us a method wherein we can upload all those files what are required for our website, and we can easily access those files whenever we need it. So at the same time, we can even host a website which is very plain, like if that website is having plain HTML or for that matter React. So S3 can be used. We'll look more into depth how you can provision the S3 and how you can use that bucket. The last service is Amplify. So Amplify you can consider similar to Elastic Beanstalk. It has its own environment which allows you to host a particular app. It mostly supports JavaScript, then JavaScript based apps which involves React, Next, and all other Vue.js or all other platforms, even if you can have your mobile app hosted on Amplify. Okay, so this is a sample image. Okay, so I'll just go over the Amplify console. I'll be taking up the Beanstalk and EC2 and other instances in a short while. So when you log into your console and when you search for Amplify, you need to select this AWS Amplify. So once you select that, you will see all the apps that are listed, okay, like how it is right now. And I can create a new app. So in my case, I already have my app hosted, but in your case, if you want to host your React app, you can click on host web app. Now in Amplify, there is a good way wherein you don't have to actually upload your code again and again. You can just connect your repository, that is GitHub, Bitbucket, or any version control system that you are familiar with, and just connect it with this hosting. So once you connect that, you can select you need to authorize that account which you want to connect. So once you authorize that account, you will be able to see all those repositories which you can use for your app. So that process takes little time. So I already have that thing set up for me. So if you see here, so I have already connected the GitHub, that is my account, with Amplify. I have selected the repository. So in my case, I have selected the repository which is publicly available. So in case at the end of this session, if you need to use that repository, feel free to use, and you can push any commits, or if you want to play around, you can play around with it. I'll share the URL maybe at the end of this session. So I have connected that repository with this Amplify app. I can select the environment. I can even create the new environment. So if I have two branches, one which I need to link with live side, another one with the dev side, that is the staging instance, then I can create those environments accordingly, and I can just link that branches with that app. So once I click on next, it will try to pull all the required information present in that repository. So I'll just keep it for a moment. So basically, once you connect, the Amplify will go in the provisions stage, wherein it will pull all the files. So if you see here, it will create the environment, what is required for that app, which you define at the start. It runs some shell commands which are required for that app, and it installs the packages required for the node models. Okay. Then it goes to the build phase, wherein it generates the optimized version of your app, what I earlier mentioned as the optimized build. So that actually happens at Amplify level. So if you see here, it basically installs all the packages that are required um, for the app, React app, and then it generates the build. As you can see here, all the static files are generated, and then the same stored in the artifact, and it is uploaded on the server. Now the server what is used in Amplify is not directly accessible to us. So everything is actually taken care of for you. Only you need to link the repository and work with it. Next, the deployment phase, all the generated files are deployed. And the last stage, it just checks whether the environment is ready for you to access it. And once all these steps are completed, you will be able to access that site using this domain. So if I click on this domain, I'll see this basic React app, which I had connected with the repository. So this is just the contact details and other information that is pulled. Now, another good thing about Amplify is if you want to have your domain, the custom domain linked with this, then you can add that domain and link with the generated URL. So it also allows us to have that custom domain link. Then we can even define the different builds, or normally when we connect the repository, there are some steps or the shell commands that needs to get executed depending upon the type of project that we work. So in React, basically we have this npm CI or npm install. So it basically installs all those packages which are required for the build phase, and then it runs the build, and then at the last stage it just passes those files in the form of artifact into the server where we are directly accessing the site. Similarly, there are other settings which are available with the Amplify, which you can explore while working on the same, or in case if you need any help while going through this, you can buzz me. Okay, so this was regarding Amplify. Next, we will look at the Elastic Beanstalk. So for Elastic Beanstalk, I have, so once you search Elastic Beanstalk, you will find this screen wherein you need to create that application. Okay, so I'll quickly create one application. Yeah, actually it will take little time. So I'll exactly point out what are the things that you can select while working with the um, yes, while working with your app. So in Elastic Beanstalk, we have our predefined environments set up for us. So we can just select what are the supported platforms or the underlying modules that are required to run our app. So in our case, we need the Node.js platform to run our React app. So I have selected it. So it basically shows us the EC2 instance along with that package install, and it gives us the flexibility like to select different versions. But for now, I think okay, so I think for now, yeah, so here you have different versions you can select based on your app. And there are options wherein you can, if you want to test the environment whether your React app is supported or not, you can upload the sample application. So when you select the sample application, it basically picks any repository which are like a blueprint for this platform, and it uploads on that instance, and you can test the environment. Okay, or if you are confident that okay, you have your build optimized version is available with you and it will work fine, then you can directly upload the code. So you can actually directly select the file, the zip file, or you can upload it on the S3, and from there you can select the URL and you can create the application. So in here I already have one application created for me. Yes, so here this is the application which I had created, and by default every time we need to define the environment. So in case if you want to have multiple environments like dev, staging, that can be defined as per your project need. And once you select that environment, you will be able to see the health checks, that is if that EC2, the underlying compute service is active or not, that you can verify here, and basically all that log will be available here. So if you see here is deployed to running EC2 instance. Okay. Now initially when you upload your code, if you want to re-upload it, you can click on here and re-upload it. Even if you want to change the platform, but there are some restrictions while changing it. Which you need to consider and avoid at most of the time. Maybe you can create a new environment just to check, and there are other options available, like if you want to check the log of what different different access or error logs, if there are any, then you can check those logs here. Then if there is configuration at ground level or at instance level, then like how on the cpanel we set all those parameters, like allow your URL f open that library on off, display errors, and all other things what we normally set in cpanel or any other hosting platform, those are directly available here to set. And also another good part of Elastic Beanstalk is if your app is production ready, and if you want to put some load on your app and test whether it will support it or how it will exactly work, then you can make use of load balancer. Okay, so these are different options available. Even if you want to connect the database, that is also possible, which can be used through the environment variables and all those aspects. Okay, another good aspect of Elastic Beanstalk is, again, you can connect it with the code pipeline. So code pipeline is basically a service wherein you link your GitHub or any version control system with uh, the end instance where you need to deploy all the files. The intermediate steps involve the build and code deploy. Now in this application, it's just plain PHP app. So I have not used build phase. I have just connected the code commit with all the files and I have just deployed it on Elastic Beanstalk. Similarly, you have different other options available if you want to deploy it on EC2. So it depends on the requirement that you have for that particular app. Okay, so this was regarding Elastic Beanstalk. Now the third one, the S3. This is very interesting, and if you don't want to get into any complications and just want to have your website up and running by just uploading the files, then this is a very good way you can quickly achieve that. So basically you will have to create an S3 bucket. It is recommended that you select a region that is relevant or close to the people who will be accessing your site. Okay, so you'll see all those regions here. And while creating that bucket, you will have that option. So once you create that bucket, you can upload all the files. Once you upload those files in the properties, at the very end, you will see static website hosting. So you just click on that and just enable static website hosting. So and in here you can put by default index.html and error.html. This is a convention that you need to follow to make S3 as a static website. Okay, otherwise it will be accessible as a files. Okay, so once you enable the static website, there is one part which needs to be allowed, that is the public access. So by default, while creation of this bucket, it will ask you whether you need to create, whether you need to keep this bucket public. So you can select it as public. This part is called as bucket policy. So basically if you want to restrict and follow some good conventions such that your files are not hampered or there are no attempts to change the files that are uploaded on S3 bucket, then you can put this policy. Otherwise, you will have to make all those files and the entire bucket, the different access levels as public. Okay, so in order to avoid that, you can directly use this policy. So this policy is actually can be directly generated. When you click in here, if you see at first there is action. So in action, the basic action that we need for this project is to get all the files. Object is basically all the files which are stored on S3. Then we have resource. Resource is the bucket that you have created. And yeah, so actually these two parameters are important. Rest of the things will be generated by default. So once you save it, you will have yeah. So once you save all these details, you will find your app running and you can access it using this URL. Okay. So this is regarding S3. Now the last part is EC2. So for EC2, you will have to create the instance, and for creating the instance, you have this launch option. So with this launch option, you need to select the AMI which is required, like depending upon the type of underlying platform, if you need Linux or if you need Windows. So based on that, you can select this AMI. So AMIs are nothing but a virtual machines or those machine virtual systems, basically those systems which you will be using to host those files. So from there, once you launch this instance, you will have the key pair to access that instance. So I'm not sure if all the people who join are aware of key pair, but just to simplify it, it is basically the username and password that you normally use for any of the portal or anything. So that key pair is actually a security uh, which validates whether the user who is trying to access that instance is valid or not. Okay. So in case if someone wants to launch this instance and try out, you can directly reach out to any of the member who are actively working with AWS. They shall help you with the setting up the instance and other required things. Okay. Yes. So the things that I have explained, the same I have put. So initially, obviously, you will have to create the React app using the node modules and the libraries. Once you create that app, you run a build. So once you run a build, you have that optimized version. There are two options what you can do. Either you push it on the repository. So once you deploy, that deployment will take care of all the build and other aspects, like how it is available with Amplify. Or else if you don't want to get into connecting the repository, then you can actually directly create your own build and you can upload all those files on S3. So this is much simplified form, and you will have your website ready once you enable the static hosting. So the basic things that you need to start with, what I have mentioned here, is obviously you will need the AWS account. So once you have the account, once you log in, you can search for any of the services which you want to use for your app. Then provision those required resources. So you can create that app, create the app, connect the branch and other things. Then SSH, SFTP, this is to copy the files, like I have mentioned the EC2. So if there, once you have the SSH key pairs, you can use those key pairs, connect to the instance and copy all those files. Then once you have that instance ready, you can access those instances using their IP. So let's say there are two instances. Yeah, so these two instances are currently in use. I'm not sure who had created it. I'm just checking. So this IP you can use, or this public DNS you can use to access the instance. So I'll just see if this is publicly accessible. So once you create this instance, you need to allow the traffic on port. Like normally when you create the instance, by default, the users over the internet won't be able to access the traffic. So there are different security practices that are in place. So you need to allow all those while setting up this instance. Okay. So I guess this is not publicly accessible, so you may not see something, but this is the convention which you can follow if your instance is publicly accessible. Okay, you can either use this public IP or this DNS. Okay, and in case of S3, what I had shown, the URL that you have, this you can with this you can access the site, or with Amplify you can use it with this URL. Now there is another thing that you need to keep in mind, that let's say if there is some payment gateway or any other security aspect of your app, then better you prefer Amplify, because it will have that security lock, while compared to S3 it will have their HTTP insecure request. Okay, this is just a small part which you can consider while working with this. Yeah, so the demo what I have shown here, this is a plain React app which I have deployed, and it is available directly if you search on GitHub. And in case if you need to work with that, I can share that URL and you can contribute and you can update this app. Yes, so this was a very short technical PDC, and within time, I believe. So if there are any questions or anything which was not clear or something that I need to share, maybe you guys can ask.